During Christmas week, I found my granddaughter asleep in a car in a supermarket parking lot, even though her mother had told me she was studying abroad. When I called her name, I froze in place, and what I saw made my heart stop. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The Christmas lights strung across the supermarket parking lot cast red and green shadows across the frost-covered windshields. I'd only stopped for milk and eggs, the basics that get you through the lonely holidays when your only son is gone and the rest of your family has scattered like autumn leaves. At 69, I'd grown accustomed to solitary errands, to the quiet clink of a single shopping bag, to checking my watch and realizing no one was waiting for me at home. But something made me pause between the rows of cars that Tuesday afternoon, 3 days before Christmas. A silver Honda Civic, older model, windows fogged from the inside, and through that condensation, I could just make out a shape, someone curled up in the back seat, wrapped in what looked like a sleeping bag. My first instinct was concern. The temperature had dropped to 28 degrees overnight. People froze to death in their cars during Minnesota winters. I'd seen it on the news. I approached slowly, my breath forming small clouds in the December air. As I got closer, I noticed things that made my heart squeeze. A duffel bag pressed against the rear window, a pillow with a cheerful floral pattern, textbooks stacked on the passenger seat. Someone was living in this car. I knocked gently on the window. The figure stirred, and a face emerged from the sleeping bag. A young woman, maybe 19 or 20, with dark circles under her eyes and hair that needed washing. She blinked at me, disoriented. Then panic flashed across her features. She scrambled upright, hitting her head on the ceiling in her haste. That's when I saw her face clearly. My granddaughter, Charlotte. The world tilted sideways. I grabbed the car door to steady myself, my groceries falling from my hand, eggs cracking against the frozen asphalt. "Charlotte?" My voice came out as a whisper, then stronger. "Charlotte!" She rolled down the window a crack, and I could see she was trembling. Whether from cold or fear, I couldn't tell. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, her voice hoarse. "I was just resting. I'll move the car. I didn't mean to." "Charlotte, it's Grandma. It's me, Joyce." She stared at me with blank, frightened eyes. "I think you have me confused with someone else. My name's not Charlotte." The parking lot seemed to spin. I pressed my hand against the cold metal of the car. "Charlotte Rose Cartwright, you're my granddaughter. Your father was my son, David. You used to spend every summer at my farm until you were 12. "Ma'am, I don't know what you're talking about." She was rolling up the window now, her hands shaking. "Please, just leave me alone." "Wait." I pulled out my phone with fumbling fingers, scrolling through my photos. There weren't many recent ones. Charlotte's mother, Tiffany, had become scarce after David's death 3 years ago. But I found one from Charlotte's 16th birthday, the last time I'd seen her in person. I pressed it against the glass. Charlotte looked at the photo, then at me, and something flickered in her eyes. Recognition? Confusion? Then the blankness returned, more forceful this time, like a door slamming shut. "That's not me," she said, but her voice wavered. "Your mother told me you were studying abroad." I continued, desperate now. "Oxford. You were accepted on a full scholarship. She sent me an email last year saying you were too busy with coursework to call, that international rates were expensive." "My mother's dead," Charlotte interrupted, and there was something raw and broken in those 3 words. "She died when I was 7. I felt like I'd been struck." "What?" "No. Tiffany is alive. She emails me. She sent me a Christmas card just last week." Charlotte's face had gone very pale. "I need you to leave now. Please, Charlotte. Something's wrong here. Very wrong. Let me help you. You're living in your car in December. How do you know my name?" The question came out sharp, accusing. "Because I'm your grandmother. I held you when you were born. I taught you to ride a bike. You were afraid of the chickens on my farm, but you loved the horses. There was one named Butterscotch." "Stop." Charlotte's hands were over her ears now. "Please stop." A security guard was walking toward us, his hand on his radio. I had maybe 30 seconds before this situation escalated in ways I couldn't control. "I live at 1247 Oak Ridge Road," I said quickly. "The farmhouse with the blue shutters." If you need anything, food, warmth, answers, I'll be there. Please, Charlotte, I'm not crazy. And neither are you. The security guard was 10 feet away. Everything okay here, ladies? Charlotte looked at me one more time, and I saw something in her expression that made my blood run cold. It wasn't just confusion. It was terror. Everything's fine, she told the guard, her voice suddenly steady. This woman mistook me for someone else. I was just leaving. She started the engine, and I had to step back. The Honda pulled away, leaving me standing in a puddle of broken eggs and spilled milk, watching my granddaughter disappear into traffic like she was a ghost I'd only imagined, but I hadn't imagined her. And I knew, with a certainty that settled into my bones like winter cold, that something terrible had happened to that girl, to my granddaughter. The security guard was still watching me. You need help getting to your car, ma'am? No, I said softly. But thank you. I walked back to my Subaru on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. My hands shook as I started the engine, cranked up the heat. I sat there for a long moment, staring at nothing, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Tiffany had told me Charlotte was at Oxford. She'd sent emails, chatty, brief messages full of excuses about busy schedules and expensive international calls. She'd promised Charlotte would visit during summer break, then claimed the girl had landed an internship in London. There was always a reason why Charlotte couldn't come to the phone, couldn't video chat, couldn't visit, and I'd believed her. Because what grandmother suspects her own daughter-in-law of lying about something so fundamental? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my messages. Found the last email from Tiffany, dated December 19th, just 5 days ago. Dear Joyce, Charlotte's doing wonderfully at Oxford. She's made the dean's list and is thinking about staying through the summer term. She asked me to tell you Merry Christmas, and she misses your apple pie. Hope you're keeping warm. Tiffany. My thumb hovered over the call button. Part of me wanted to dial Tiffany's number immediately, demand an explanation, but something held me back. An instinct honed over 69 years of navigating difficult situations, of learning when to speak and when to watch. If Tiffany had lied about Charlotte's whereabouts for over a year, there was a reason, and confronting her directly might make things worse for Charlotte. I needed information first. I needed to understand what I was dealing with. I drove home slowly, my mind racing. The farmhouse looked exactly as I'd left it. The Christmas wreath on the door that I'd hung more out of habit than joy. The lights in the window that made the place look less empty. My husband Tom had died 8 years ago. David, our only child, had passed away 3 years ago. A heart attack at 42, sudden and cruel. Tiffany had been devastated. Or so I'd thought. Now I wondered what else I'd been wrong about. Inside, I made tea I didn't drink and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I started with the easy things, Charlotte's social media accounts. But they'd been inactive for months. The last post dated March, a generic photo of Oxford's campus that could have been pulled from anywhere. I tried the university's website, searching for her name in the student directory. Nothing. My neighbor, Patricia, was a retired paralegal. We'd been friends for 30 years, and she knew how to find information that most people couldn't. I called her. Joyce, what's wrong? You sound shaken. I need a favor, I said, and I need you not to ask too many questions yet. 20 minutes later, Patricia was at my kitchen table with her laptop, her reading glasses perched on her nose. You want me to run a background check on your own daughter-in-law? She asked carefully. And find anything you can about Charlotte. Her current address? Credit cards? Bank accounts? Anything. Patricia studied my face. What happened? I saw Charlotte today. She's living in her car. And she pretended she didn't know me. Patricia's expression shifted from concern to something sharper. Give me Tiffany's full name and date of birth. 2 hours later, we had our first answers. And they opened doors to questions I'd never imagined asking. Tiffany had filed for bankruptcy 14 months ago. Her house, the one she'd shared with David, where Charlotte had grown up, had been foreclosed on 9 months back. There were liens against her name, collection notices, a pattern of debt that painted a picture of financial collapse. But that wasn't the worst of it. Joyce, Patricia said quietly, pointing to a court document on her screen. Look at this. It was a petition for emancipation, filed by Charlotte Rose Cartwright 2 years ago, 6 months after David's death. Charlotte had legally separated herself from her mother before she'd even turned 18. "What does this mean?" I whispered. "It means Charlotte went to court and convinced a judge that living with Tiffany was no longer safe or viable," Patricia said. "Emancipation isn't easy to get. Judges don't grant it unless there's serious cause." The room felt too small suddenly, the walls pressing in. I thought of my bright, laughing granddaughter, the girl who'd loved horses and reading and baking cookies with me during summer visits. I thought of the frightened young woman in the parking lot, living in a car during a Minnesota winter. What had Tiffany done to her? My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Don't tell her you found me, please. She can't know." "Charlotte." I typed back quickly. "I won't. I promise. Are you safe?" The reply came after a long pause. "Not really. But safer than I was. Let me help you." "You can't. Not yet. She has something. Something I need." "What?" But there was no answer. I waited, staring at the screen until Patricia gently touched my arm. "Joyce, this is serious. If Charlotte's in danger—" "I know," I said. "But she doesn't want me to confront Tiffany." "Not yet." "Then what are you going to do?" I looked at my friend, at the documents spread across my kitchen table, at the phone clutched in my hand. I thought about my granddaughter sleeping in a frozen car, about the lies Tiffany had told me, about the secrets that had been kept for years. "I'm going to find out what Tiffany did," I said quietly. "And then I'm going to fix it." Patricia nodded slowly. "I'll help." That night, I lay awake in the same bed I'd shared with Tom for 40 years, staring at the ceiling and making plans. I'd raised a son through scraped knees and teenage rebellion. I'd built a life on this farm with my bare hands and stubborn will. I'd survived the deaths of the 2 men I loved most in the world. I could handle one lying daughter-in-law, but as I finally drifted toward sleep, Charlotte's words echoed in my mind. She has something. Something I need. What could Tiffany possibly have that would keep Charlotte trapped in this nightmare? What leverage could be so powerful that my granddaughter would choose a car over coming to me for help? And how long had Tiffany been planning whatever game she was playing? Outside my window, the Christmas lights from the neighboring houses twinkled through the darkness, cheerful and oblivious. Inside, I felt the first stirrings of something I hadn't experienced in years. Not since the early days of the farm, when creditors called and winters were hard and giving up would have been easier than pushing forward. I felt the cold, clear determination of a woman who'd been underestimated one too many times. Tiffany didn't know it yet, but she'd made a critical mistake. She'd forgotten that grandmothers aren't just soft laps and warm cookies. We're the ones who survived wars and depressions, who raised families on nothing but grit and prayer, who learned to be steel wrapped in softness. She'd forgotten that I was my granddaughter's blood, and she was about to remember. The next morning, I woke to 3 inches of fresh snow, and a plan forming in my mind like ice crystals on a window. The first rule of any investigation, something Tom had taught me during his years as a county assessor, was to know your subject before they knew you were looking. I needed to understand Tiffany's life now, not the version she'd presented to me in carefully curated emails, but the truth hidden beneath. Patricia arrived at 8 with coffee and a manila folder thick with printouts. "You're not going to like this," she said, settling at my kitchen table. The documents painted a picture of systematic collapse. Tiffany had lost her nursing job at Mercy Hospital 18 months ago. Not laid off, but terminated. Patricia had a friend who still worked there, and the whispered reason was irregularities with medication inventory. My stomach tightened. You think she was stealing drugs? Nothing was ever proven, but the timing matches when her financial troubles started. Patricia pulled out another document. After that, she worked 3 different jobs in 8 months. Waitress, retail clerk, hotel housekeeper. All of them ended within weeks. Where is she living now? That's the interesting part. She's renting a room in a house on Linden Street, month to month. But Joyce, look at this. She pushed forward a bank statement. I didn't ask how she'd obtained it. Regular deposits. $2,000, first of every month for the past 9 months. Always cash deposits, so there's no sender information. Someone's paying her, I said slowly. Or she's paying someone and this is what's left over. Either way, it's not from employment. I checked. She hasn't filed taxes for any income this year. I stared at the numbers, my mind working. $2,000 a month was enough to survive on. Barely. But it wasn't enough to explain why Charlotte was living in a car while her mother had a roof over her head. Unless Tiffany had made a choice about who that money would support. My phone buzzed. Another text from Charlotte's number. Did you tell anyone? Just one friend helping me. She won't say anything. Are you warm? Do you need food? I'm okay. Working evenings at the diner on Highway 12. Tips are good. Let me bring you something. Please. A long pause, then. Maybe. But not at the diner. She knows people there. The library parking lot. 2 p.m. I'll be there. I looked up to find Patricia watching me with concern. You're meeting her? This afternoon. I stood, pacing to the window. The farm stretched out before me. Snow-covered fields that Tom and I had worked for decades. Beyond the barn, I could see the fence line where David had learned to ride his first horse. Patricia, I need you to find out who's sending Tiffany that money. That could take time. Cash deposits are hard to trace. Then while you're working on that, I need to do something else. I turned back to her. I need to see Tiffany. Patricia's eyes widened. Joyce, Charlotte said not to tell Tiffany I found her. I won't. But I can visit my daughter-in-law for a friendly Christmas check-in, can't I? See what she lets slip, what condition she's in, whether she's acting strange. That's dangerous. If she realizes you're suspicious, then I'll be a sweet, naive old woman who doesn't realize anything. I smiled grimly. I've been playing that role my whole life when I needed to. Men underestimated me in business dealings. County officials thought I didn't understand property law. Even Tom sometimes thought I didn't notice things I noticed very well. Patricia studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Just be careful. Something about this whole situation feels wrong in ways I can't quite name. After she left, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, choosing my outfit like I was donning armor. A soft cardigan, sensible slacks, minimal makeup. I needed to look exactly like what Tiffany expected. A harmless elderly woman, lonely during the holidays, bringing cookies and concern. The cookies were real, at least. I'd baked them that morning. Snickerdoodles, Tiffany's favorite. Or what used to be her favorite, back when she was part of our family and more than name. The house on Linden Street was a tired Victorian conversion, split into 4 rental units. Tiffany's name was on the buzzer for 2B. I pressed it, my heart hammering. No answer. I pressed again, longer this time. Still nothing. I was about to turn away when the front door opened and a young man emerged, heading out with a backpack. I caught the door before it closed, offering him a grandmother's smile. Oh, thank you, dear. My daughter-in-law keeps forgetting to answer the buzzer. He nodded absently, already on his phone, and I slipped inside. The hallway smelled of old cooking and mildew. 2B was on the second floor, down a dim corridor with peeling wallpaper. I knocked softly. Tiffany? It's Joyce. Silence. Then footsteps, slow and hesitant. The woman who opened the door was barely recognizable. Tiffany had always been put together, even in grief. Neat hair, pressed clothes, careful makeup. The person before me looked like she'd aged a decade in 3 years. Her hair was unwashed, pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore sweatpants and an oversized shirt with stains down the front. Her eyes were sunken, rimmed with darkness. But it was the look in those eyes that shocked me most. Not surprise at seeing me, not pleasure, but something close to fear, followed immediately by a hardness I'd never seen in her before. Joyce, she said flatly. What are you doing here? I brought cookies. I held up the container, feeling suddenly foolish. I thought since it's Christmas we could visit. I haven't seen you since last year, and I just wanted to check. I'm busy, she interrupted. Oh. I tried to peer past her into the apartment, but she shifted, blocking my view. Is everything all right? You look tired. I'm fine. Working a lot. You know how it is. What are you doing for work these days? Last I heard, you were at the hospital. I left there. Better opportunities elsewhere. Her hand was white-knuckled on the doorframe. Was there something specific you needed? This wasn't the Tiffany I knew. Even in the worst days after David's death, she'd maintained a veneer of warmth with me. This woman was a stranger wearing my daughter-in-law's face. I was hoping to hear about Charlotte, I said, keeping my voice light and innocent. How's she doing at Oxford? I'd love to send her a care package. Something flickered in Tiffany's expression. She's fine. Busy with finals. She'll probably call over Christmas break. That would be wonderful. I haven't heard her voice in so long. I paused, then took a risk. I was thinking I might fly out to visit her in the spring. I've never been to England. Do you think she'd like that? The color drained from Tiffany's face. No, that's not a good idea. She's very focused on her studies. A visit would be distracting. I'm sure she could spare a weekend for her grandmother. Joyce. Tiffany's voice had gone cold. Charlotte is an adult now. She has her own life. You need to respect that and stop trying to interfere. The word choice struck me. Interfere. As if my relationship with my granddaughter was an intrusion. I'm not trying to interfere, I said gently. I just miss her. I miss both of you. We're family. Family. Tiffany laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. You have a funny definition of that word. Before I could respond, a voice called from inside the apartment, a man's voice, rough and impatient. Tiffany? Who is it? Her face went rigid. No one. Just a neighbor. Then get rid of them. We need to finish this. Tiffany started to close the door, but I put my hand out, stopping it. Who's that? None of your business. Tiffany, please. If you're in some kind of trouble, the only trouble I have is people who can't take a hint. She pushed against the door, forcing me to step back. Go home, Joyce. Stop showing up unannounced. And stop asking about Charlotte. She's fine, she's happy, and she doesn't need you hovering over her life like some kind of helicopter grandmother. The door slammed in my face. I stood there for a moment, my hand still raised, the cookie container feeling absurdly cheerful in my grip. Behind the door, I could hear raised voices. Tiffany's pleading, the man's angry, but I couldn't make out words. I walked back down the hallway slowly, my mind racing. Someone was in that apartment with Tiffany. Someone who didn't want to be seen or identified. And Tiffany had lied about Charlotte with an ease that suggested long practice. Outside, I sat in my Subaru and called Patricia. She's hiding something, I said. Or hiding from something. There's a man in her apartment, and she panicked when I mentioned visiting Charlotte in England. Did you get a look at him? No, but his voice was threatening. Patricia, I think Tiffany might be in over her head with something. That doesn't excuse what she's done to Charlotte. No, I agreed, but it might explain it. I drove to the library, arriving 20 minutes early. The parking lot was nearly empty. Most people were home with family, preparing for Christmas. I parked in a corner spot and waited. At exactly 2 o'clock, Charlotte's Honda pulled in 3 spaces away. She got out slowly, looking around nervously before approaching my car. I unlocked the passenger door, and she slid in, bringing cold air and the smell of French fries with her. Up close, in daylight, she looked worse than I'd thought. Too thin, with hollows under her cheekbones. Her hands were chapped and red, and when she pushed her hair back, I saw a bruise on her temple, fading to yellow-green. When did that happen? I asked, pointing. She touched it self-consciously. Couple weeks ago. Slipped on ice getting into my car. It's nothing. The lie was obvious, but I didn't push. Not yet. I brought you food, I said, pulling out the thermos of soup and sandwiches I'd packed. And blankets, and a space heater that runs on batteries. Her eyes filled with tears. You can't. I can't accept. Yes, you can. You're my granddaughter, Charlotte. I don't care if you remember me or not. I remember you. That's the problem, she whispered. I do remember. I remember everything. The farm, the horses, your apple pie. I remember you teaching me to knit, and how you always smelled like lavender, and the way you'd read me stories before bed during summer visits. Then why did you say you didn't know me? She looked down at her hands. Because if she found out I talked to you, if she knew I was still in Minnesota, she'd destroy the one thing I have left of him. Of your father? Charlotte nodded, and a tear slipped down her cheek. Before he died, Dad set up a trust fund for me. Not much, but enough for college. The money's locked until I'm 21. That's 14 months away. The only way to access it early is if both my parents sign off on it, or if my custodial parent agrees to transfer custodianship to someone else. Understanding dawned, cold and terrible. And Tiffany won't transfer it. She can't, because she already tried to steal it. Right after Dad died, she forged his signature on documents to drain the account. But the bank caught it because Dad had set up extra security. He told me once he was worried about her spending. They flagged the account and froze everything until I turned 18. So, when you got emancipated, the court appointed a trustee to oversee the money until I'm 21. But Tiffany still has something the bank needs to fully release the funds. Charlotte's hands were shaking. Dad's original death certificate. The real one, not the copy. The trust documents require it for final verification of the custodial parent's status. She took it from the house before I could get it, and now she's holding it hostage. Why would she do that? What does she want? Charlotte's laugh was bitter. Money, obviously. She says if I give her half the trust, she'll hand over the certificate. If I don't, she'll destroy it, and the bank says it could take years to get court approval for release without it. By then, I'll have lost any chance at college, at getting out of here. I felt rage building in my chest, hot and sharp. Charlotte, that's extortion. We can go to the police. No, her hand shot out, gripping my arm. That's exactly what she wants. She told me if I go to the authorities, she'll claim I stole from her, that I'm lying about the trust, that I'm mentally unstable. She has a whole story prepared. And Joyce, her voice dropped to a whisper. She has friends. Bad friends. The man who's been staying with her, I don't know who he is, but he scares me. Last month I saw her meeting with him at a truck stop, and the way he looked at me, she shuddered. You saw her? Does she know you're still here? I don't think so. I've been so careful. I use a fake name at work. I never go anywhere she might be, but I'm terrified she'll find out, that she'll do something before I turn 21 and can get my money and disappear. I pulled Charlotte into a hug, feeling how she trembled against me. You're not disappearing, and you're not giving her 1 penny of your father's money. Then what do? I'm trapped, Joyce. In 14 months, I'm free. But I don't know if I can survive 14 more months living like this. You won't have to, I said firmly. You're going to come stay with me. I can't. If she finds out, then she won't find out. We'll be smart about this. You'll park your car somewhere she'd never look. We'll say you're a hired hand, helping with the farm. No one questions an old woman getting help with chores. But my job, you'll keep it. We'll work around it. Charlotte, please, let me help you. She looked at me with David's eyes, and I saw the war between hope and fear playing out on her face. Finally, she nodded. Okay, but there's something you need to know first. Something about why Mom is so desperate for money. The man in her apartment? Not just him. Joyce, Mom's involved in something. I don't know what exactly, but it's bad. Last year, before I got emancipated, I found documents in her room, bank records from accounts I'd never heard of, photographs of people doing things, illegal things, and a ledger with names and amounts. My blood ran cold. Do you still have these documents? No. She caught me looking and went crazy. That's when things got really bad, when I knew I had to get out. But I remember some of the names in that ledger. She pulled out her phone, showing me a note. I wrote them down. I thought maybe someday they'd be useful. I looked at the list. Most names meant nothing to me, but one jumped out. Roger Reeves. I knew that name. Everyone in 3 counties knew that name. Roger Reeves ran a construction company that had been investigated twice for fraud. His brother was serving time for racketeering. The Reeves family had fingers in every shady deal from here to the Iowa border. Charlotte, I said carefully, if your mother is involved with the Reeves family, then we're both in danger, she finished. Yeah, I know. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of it settling over us like snow. Then Charlotte spoke again, her voice small. I'm scared, Joyce. Not just for me. For you too. If you help me and she finds out, I don't know what she'll do. I took her cold hand in mine. Then we'll make sure she doesn't find out until it's too late. And in 14 months, when you get your money, we'll have the last laugh. What if 14 months isn't fast enough? What if she finds that death certificate and destroys it out of spite, just because she can? It was a valid fear. I'd seen the look in Tiffany's eyes that morning. She was desperate, and desperate people did desperate things. Then we find it first, I said. Charlotte's eyes widened. How? I don't know yet, but I will. I squeezed her hand. Your father didn't raise you to be a victim, Charlotte. And his mother didn't raise him that way either. We're survivors. And survivors fight back smart. She managed a weak smile. Dad used to say you were the toughest person he knew. Your father was right. I started the car, cranking up the heat. Now let's get you home. The real home. Where you belong. As we pulled out of the library parking lot, I caught a glimpse of a dark truck idling at the far end. Just sitting there, engine running. The windows were tinted too dark to see inside. Charlotte, I said quietly, is that truck following you? She looked, and her face went white. I don't know. Maybe. I've seen one like it near my work sometimes, but I thought I was being paranoid. You're not paranoid if they're really watching, I said grimly. The truck didn't follow us, or if it did, it stayed far enough back that I couldn't spot it. But the seed of worry had been planted. Tiffany wasn't just holding a document hostage. She was involved with dangerous people, and now that I'd shown up at her door asking questions, I'd put myself on her radar. What had Charlotte said? She has friends, bad friends. And what had the man in Tiffany's apartment said? We need to finish this. Finish what? As the farmhouse came into view, snow-covered and peaceful in the winter afternoon, I felt the first real stirring of fear. Not for myself. I'd faced worse than Tiffany and her mysterious associates. But for Charlotte. For my granddaughter, who'd been surviving alone for far too long, who'd lost her father and been betrayed by her mother, who'd trusted me enough to come out of hiding. I would protect her, whatever it took. But first, I needed to understand exactly what we were up against. And I had a feeling that understanding was going to lead me somewhere very dark indeed. Charlotte moved into the farmhouse that night, parking her Honda in the old equipment barn where it couldn't be seen from the road. We agreed on a cover story. She was a college student I'd hired to help with winter chores and keep me company. The neighbors knew I'd been talking about getting help, so it wouldn't raise eyebrows. What would raise eyebrows was what I planned to do next. You're going to break into her apartment? Patricia's voice rose an octave over the phone the next morning. Joyce, that's illegal. That's necessary, I interrupted. Charlotte can't access her own inheritance because Tiffany is holding a legal document hostage. That certificate belongs to Charlotte as much as it belongs to Tiffany. I'm just retrieving stolen property. A prosecutor wouldn't see it that way. Then I won't get caught. I kept my voice calm, but my heart was racing. I'd never broken a law in my life beyond the occasional speed limit violation. But this was different. This was for Charlotte. For David's daughter. Patricia sighed heavily. When? Tomorrow morning. Tiffany works at a warehouse now. I saw her time card on her fridge when the door swung open. She leaves at 7, comes back at 3:30. How do you know she keeps the certificate in her apartment? I don't. But where else would it be? She doesn't have a safe deposit box. Those show up in bank records. She doesn't have family nearby, and she's paranoid enough that she wouldn't trust anyone else with it. What if that man is there? I'd thought about that. The man in Tiffany's apartment had sounded aggressive, territorial, but he'd also said, we need to finish this, implying he wouldn't be staying indefinitely. Then I'll be very quiet, I said. Patricia, I need you to do something for me. Can you watch the apartment tomorrow? If Tiffany comes back early, call me immediately. This is insane. I know. Will you help me anyway? A long pause. Tom would have hated this. Tom would have done the exact same thing if David's daughter needed him. She couldn't argue with that. Fine. But if you get arrested, I'm telling everyone I tried to talk you out of it. That night, I taught Charlotte how to make Thomas's famous pot roast. We worked side by side in the kitchen, and slowly, the tension in her shoulders began to ease. She told me about the last 3 years, the slow realization that her mother's grief had turned toxic, the discovery of forged signatures, The terrifying confrontation that had ended with Tiffany screaming that Charlotte was ungrateful, selfish, just like David. She said Dad never really loved her, Charlotte whispered as we chopped vegetables. She said he only married her because she got pregnant, and he spent 20 years resenting her for trapping him. That's not true, I said firmly. Your father loved your mother very much. At least he did in the beginning. I watched them together, Charlotte. He chose her every day. Then what happened? I thought about the question carefully. I think grief broke something in her. Losing David broke all of us. But your mother, she'd always been a little fragile. Your father was her anchor, and when he died, she just drifted. Drifted into crime? Charlotte's laugh was bitter. Maybe she was desperate. Maybe she made bad choices trying to survive. Or maybe… I paused, considering. Maybe there was always something there we didn't see. Something David protected her from, or protected us from knowing about. Charlotte was quiet for a moment. Dad used to argue with her about money. I'd hear them late at night. He'd say she was spending too much, making bad decisions. Once I heard him say, "Tiffany, if you keep this up, I'll have no choice." I never knew what he meant. Maybe he knew she had problems. Then why did he leave her in charge of my trust? Why didn't he make you the custodian? It was a question I'd been asking myself. David had set up that trust without telling me, had structured it in ways that now seemed almost prescient. The extra security measures, the locked age requirement. Had he known something would happen to him? Had he suspected Tiffany might try exactly what she'd tried? Or had he simply been a cautious man trying to protect his daughter? I don't know, I admitted. But tomorrow, maybe we'll find some answers. The next morning dawned clear and cold. I dressed in dark, practical clothes, black jeans, a navy sweater, Thomas's old work jacket. Charlotte tried one more time to talk me out of it. "Let me go," she said. "It's my document, my risk to take." "Absolutely not. If Tiffany caught you, there's no telling what she'd do." "If she catches me?" I shrugged. "I'm a confused old woman who got the addresses mixed up. Who's going to arrest a grandmother?" Patricia was already parked down the street from Tiffany's building when I arrived at 7:30. We'd watched Tiffany leave for work 20 minutes earlier, and the man's truck, the same dark vehicle we'd seen at the library, had left 15 minutes before that. "Apartment's empty," Patricia confirmed over the phone. "But Joyce, I'm begging you to reconsider." "I'll be quick," I promised. Getting inside was easier than I'd expected. The front door lock was broken. Probably had been for months based on the scratches around the mechanism. I climbed the stairs to 2B, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. Tiffany's lock was better maintained, but I'd come prepared. Years ago, when I'd locked myself out of the farmhouse, Tom had shown me how to open our old doors with a credit card. Tiffany's door was old too, with the same kind of simple lock. It took 3 tries, but the door swung open. The apartment was worse than I'd glimpsed through the crack before. Dishes piled in the sink, clothes scattered across furniture, the sharp smell of cigarettes and something else. Something chemical that made my nose wrinkle. The main room was barely furnished. A sagging couch, a card table with folding chairs, a small TV on a plastic crate. I moved quickly, searching the obvious places first. The bedroom was just as chaotic. Unmade bed, clothes everywhere, makeup spilled across a dresser. I checked drawers, finding nothing but tangled jewelry and expired medications. Under the mattress yielded only a bottle of vodka and some wrinkled cash. The closet was mostly empty, except for a few hanging items and a stack of boxes on the floor. I pulled them out one by one. Old photos, tax documents from years ago, Charlotte's baby clothes that made my heart squeeze. But no death certificate. I was running out of places to look. The bathroom, the kitchen cabinets, behind the water heater, nothing. 40 minutes had passed. I needed to leave. Then I remembered the card table in the main room. It had a laptop on it, closed, along with scattered papers and a coffee-stained notebook. I rifled through the papers, bills mostly, and collection notices. But underneath was a folder, plain manila, unlabeled. Inside were bank statements for accounts in Tiffany's name. But the amounts were wrong. Thousands of dollars moving in and out monthly. Far more than her $2,000 deposits. I photographed each page with my phone, my hands shaking. Beneath the bank statements was a ledger, handwritten, matching what Charlotte had described. Names I recognized from local news, businessmen, contractors, a county commissioner. Beside each name were dates and amounts. Some had cryptic notes: delivered, collected, problem resolved. This wasn't just financial trouble, this was organized crime. Tiffany was keeping records of illegal transactions, but still no death certificate. My phone buzzed. Patricia. Dark truck just turned onto the street. Get out now. Panic flooded through me. I shoved the folder back, tried to arrange everything exactly as I'd found it. But my hands were shaking, and I knocked over a cup of pens. They scattered across the floor with a clatter that sounded deafening. I could hear heavy footsteps on the stairs. I ran for the door, but my foot caught on the carpet. I stumbled, catching myself on the wall, and that's when I saw it. A tiny gap between the wall and the baseboard near the floor. Something white was wedged there. The footsteps were on the landing now, keys jingling. I dropped to my knees, yanked out the paper. It was folded small, tucked so carefully it was nearly invisible. I shoved it in my pocket and lunged for the window. Tom had taught me something else during our years farming. Always know your exits. The window opened onto a fire escape that snaked down the back of the building. I was halfway through when I heard the apartment door open. What the? A man's voice, confused and angry. I pulled the window closed as quietly as I could and scrambled down the metal stairs. My knees protested. My breath came in gasps, but fear pushed me forward. At the Bot Thomas, I dropped into the alley and ran. Behind me, the window slammed open. Hey! Stop! But I was already around the corner, diving into Patricia's car. She floored it before I'd even closed the door. Did you get it? She gasped. I pulled out the folded paper with trembling hands. Opened it. David's death certificate. Official seal, raised stamp, everything needed for the bank. I got it, I whispered. We drove in silence for several minutes, taking random turns to make sure we weren't followed. My heart was still racing, adrenaline making my hands shake so badly I could barely hold the paper. He saw you, Patricia said finally. That man. He saw someone running. He didn't see my face. He'll know someone was in that apartment. Joyce, what if he tells Tiffany? What if she realizes the certificate is gone? Then she'll panic, I said. And panicked people make mistakes. I photographed the death certificate from every angle, then called Charlotte. I have it. I'm bringing it straight to the bank. Her gasp was audible. You're serious? You actually got it? I got more than that. Charlotte, your mother's in deep with some very bad people. I have evidence. Records of transactions, names, amounts. This is bigger than extortion. This is organized crime. The line was silent for so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Then Charlotte spoke, her voice strange and hollow. Joyce, what date is on the death certificate? I looked down at the document in my hand. March 15th, 2022. Why? That's wrong, she whispered. Charlotte's 21st birthday would be in June. We were supposed to celebrate that weekend, but he died 3 days before. The world tilted. I stared at the certificate, at the date stamped official and irrefutable. March 15th, 3 days before David actually died. Charlotte, what does this mean? I don't know. But Joyce, if the date is wrong, if someone falsified this, her voice broke. What if Dad didn't die of a heart attack? What if someone killed him? The phone nearly slipped from my hand. That's impossible. There was an autopsy, the hospital, the doctors. Did you see the autopsy report? I hadn't. Tiffany had handled all the paperwork, all the arrangements. She'd been so devastated, so overwhelmed, that I'd let her manage everything while I dealt with my own grief. But what if that had been a mistake? What if Tiffany's grief had been an act? I need to go, I told Charlotte. I need to think. Be careful. Please. If Mom finds out you have that certificate, she won't. Not yet. I hung up and turned to Patricia. Drive to your house. We need to dig deeper into David's death. Joyce, what's going on? I don't know, but I'm starting to think we've been asking the wrong questions. I looked down at the death certificate again, at the wrong date stamped so officially, and felt ice spreading through my veins. We've been trying to figure out why Tiffany is involved with criminals. Maybe we should be asking when it started, and what she was willing to do to get that money. Patricia's face went pale. You think she killed David? I think someone needs to explain why his death certificate is dated 3 days before he actually died, and why his widow is keeping records for people connected to organized crime. I pulled out my phone, looking at the photos I'd taken of Tiffany's ledger. One name jumped out at me now with new significance. Roger Reeves, with a date beside it. March 14th, 2022. 1 day before the false death certificate. And a note. Payment pending completion. Oh, God, I whispered. Patricia, I think David's death wasn't an accident, and I think Tiffany was involved in planning it. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered it carefully. Mrs. Cartwright? A man's voice, unfamiliar and cold. I believe you have something that doesn't belong to you. My mouth went dry. Who is this? A concerned friend of Tiffany's. She's very upset about her missing property. I'd like to arrange a return. I don't know what you're talking about. The woman who ran out of the apartment this morning. The one who took a document from its hiding place. That was you, wasn't it, Mrs. Cartwright? How did he know my name? How did he know to call this number? I'm hanging up now. I wouldn't do that. Not if you care about your granddaughter's safety. His voice was pleasant, conversational, which made it somehow worse. Charlotte is working at the diner on Highway 12 tonight, isn't she? She gets off at 10. That's a dark parking lot. Lots of things can happen in dark parking lots. Terror gripped my chest. Don't you dare touch her. Then bring back what you took. Tonight, 9 o'clock, the old grain elevator on Route 47. Come alone, bring the certificate, and maybe we can all forget this unfortunate misunderstanding. And if I don't? Then Thomas Oro morning. You'll be planning another funeral. Only this time, you'll know exactly who to blame. He paused. Oh, and Mrs. Cartwright? Don't even think about calling the police. We have friends in the department. You'd be surprised how many people on Tiffany's list wear badges. The line went dead. I sat frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear. Patricia was staring at me with wide, frightened eyes. What did he say? I told her. Watched the color drain from her face. We have to call the police anyway, she said. Joyce, these people are threatening to kill Charlotte. He said they have police on their payroll. If we call the wrong person, we're just warning them. Then what do we do? I looked at the death certificate in my hand, at the evidence of a murder that had been disguised as natural causes for 3 years, at the ledger showing my daughter-in-law was involved with organized crime, at the proof that would free Charlotte from her mother's control, if we lived long enough to use it. We go to that meeting, I said quietly, but not the way they expect. That's suicide. Maybe. Or maybe it's the only way to end this. I turned to her. Patricia, I need you to make copies of everything I photographed. Multiple copies. And I need you to know exactly what to do with them if I don't come back. Joyce. I mean it. If something happens to me tonight, these documents go to the FBI, the state police, every news outlet in Minnesota. These people need to know they can't make all of us disappear. Patricia gripped my hand, her eyes full of tears. There has to be another way. I'm open to suggestions. But we both knew there weren't any. Not ones that kept Charlotte safe. Not ones that didn't give these people time to destroy evidence and disappear. I had stumbled into something much bigger than a family dispute over money. David hadn't died of a heart attack. He'd been murdered. And Tiffany, the woman I'd welcomed into my family, the mother of my granddaughter, had been part of it. The question now was whether I could prove it before I became the next victim. And whether Charlotte would ever forgive me for the secret I was about to tell her. That her mother hadn't just abandoned her. Her mother had killed her father. And I was about to walk straight into the same people's trap. I had 6 hours to prepare for a meeting that would probably get me killed. The smart thing would have been to run. Take Charlotte and disappear into another state. Change our names. Start over. But running wouldn't give Charlotte her inheritance. It wouldn't clear David's name. And it wouldn't stop Tiffany and her associates from hurting someone else's family. No, running was what they expected an old woman to do. I had other plans. You're not actually going to that grain elevator, Charlotte said when I returned to the farmhouse. She was pacing the kitchen, her face white with fear. Joyce, please, let them have the stupid certificate. We'll find another way. There is no other way, and I'm not letting them have anything. I sat down at the kitchen table, spreading out the photocopies Patricia had made. Charlotte, I need you to tell me everything you remember about the day your father died. What? Why? Because something doesn't add up. The death certificate says March 15th. You say he died on the 18th. Help me understand the timeline. Charlotte sank into a chair, her hands twisting together. It was a Tuesday. Dad had been complaining about chest pains for a few days, but Mom kept saying it was just stress from work. That morning, he said he felt dizzy. Mom told him to rest, that she'd take him to the doctor after her shift at the hospital. She went to work that day? Yeah. She kissed him goodbye around 7. I was getting ready for school. It was my 17th birthday that weekend, remember? Her voice cracked. When I got home at 3:30, the ambulance was there. They said Dad collapsed around noon. The neighbor, Mrs. Hendricks, heard him fall and called 911. But your mother wasn't home? She was at the hospital, working. Charlotte's eyes widened. Joyce, are you saying... I'm saying your mother had opportunity. She worked in a hospital with access to medications. She had motive, your father's life insurance and your trust fund. And now we know she was connected to people who could help her. But the autopsy, they said it was a heart attack. I pulled up the photos I'd taken of Tiffany's ledger on my phone. Look at this entry. Roger Reeves, March 14th. Payment pending completion. The next entry is March 18th. The day your father actually died. Completion confirmed. Final payment arranged. Charlotte stared at the screen, her face crumbling. No, she wouldn't. She's awful. She's a liar and a thief. But she wouldn't murder him. She loved him. Did she? I asked gently. Or did she love what he represented? Security. Respectability. Money. Stop it. Charlotte stood abruptly, tears streaming down her face. You don't know that. You're just guessing. She was right. I was guessing. But my gut, honed over 69 years of reading people, of surviving in a world that underestimated women, told me I was guessing correctly. My phone rang again. The same unknown number. Mrs. Cartwright, just checking that we're still on for tonight. You wouldn't want to disappoint us. I'll be there, I said coldly. But I want guarantees. Proof that Charlotte will be safe. The man laughed. You're not in a position to negotiate. But since I'm a reasonable person, here's what I'll offer. Bring the certificate, hand it over without causing trouble, and you both walk away. Try anything clever, and the girl disappears. Understood? Understood. Good. Oh, and Mrs. Cartwright? Come alone. If I see anyone else, police, friends, even a passing car that looks suspicious, the deal's off. He hung up. Charlotte was watching me with red-rimmed eyes. You can't go. I have to. Then I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. She's my mother. If anyone confronts her about what she did, it should be me. I crossed the kitchen and took Charlotte's face in my hands, the way I used to when she was small and scraped her knee. Listen to me. If something goes wrong tonight, you're the only one who knows the truth. You're the only one who can make sure these people face justice. I need you alive, Charlotte. I need you safe. But what about you? I've lived a long life, a good life. If it ends tonight trying to protect my granddaughter, I can accept that. I smiled, though my heart was breaking. But I don't plan on dying. I plan on being very, very smart. After Charlotte finally, reluctantly agreed to stay home, I spent the afternoon preparing. Not weapons. I wouldn't know how to use them anyway. But information, evidence, insurance. Patricia helped me create a digital trail. We uploaded every photo, every document to 3 different cloud storage accounts. We wrote detailed statements explaining everything we'd discovered. We created a video. Me sitting in my kitchen, calmly explaining about David's suspicious death, Tiffany's criminal connections, the threats we'd received. If I don't contact Patricia Simmons by midnight tonight, I said to the camera, these documents should be released to the authorities and the press. Everything you need to know is in the attached files. We set up automatic emails to send at 12:01 a.m. unless I logged in to cancel them. Recipients included the FBI field office in Minneapolis, the state attorney general, 3 different news stations, and a lawyer Patricia knew who specialized in corruption cases. "This is either very smart or very stupid," Patricia said as we finished. "Probably both." I checked my watch. 7:30, 90 minutes until the meeting. I changed into practical clothes, jeans, boots, a heavy coat. In my pockets, I put my phone, a flashlight, and a small voice recorder Tom had used for dictating notes on the farm. I tested it twice, making sure it picked up clearly. Charlotte hugged me at the door, clinging like she used to as a child. "Please come back." "I will, I promise." I hoped it wasn't a lie. The drive to Route 47 took 40 minutes. The old grain elevator loomed against the winter sky, a skeletal structure that hadn't been used in decades. The parking area was empty except for the dark truck I'd seen outside Tiffany's apartment. I parked 30 feet away and checked my phone. 8:58, 2 minutes early. I started the voice recorder in my pocket and got out of the car. The truck's door opened and a man emerged. He was tall, heavily built, with the kind of face that had seen too many fights. Behind him came a second figure, Tiffany. She looked worse than she had that morning. Makeup smeared, hair wild, eyes darting nervously. When she saw me, something like guilt flashed across her face before hardening into defensiveness. "Joyce," she said, her voice shaking. "You shouldn't have taken what wasn't yours." "You mean David's death certificate? The one that proves you falsified the date?" I kept my voice steady, calm. "That wasn't yours to keep either, Tiffany." The man stepped forward. "Enough talking. Give me the certificate." "Not until we have a conversation. About March 15th, 2022. About what completion means in your ledger. About how a man has a heart attack 3 days after his death certificate was filed." Tiffany's face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. You killed him. You and your friends here murdered my son." "No!" Tiffany's voice rose to a shriek. "I didn't kill him. I would never. David was everything to me." "Then explain the date on the certificate." "It was a mistake. The clerk made a mistake at the hospital." The man grabbed Tiffany's arm roughly. "Shut up. She's recording this." He'd seen the slight bulge in my coat pocket. His hand moved toward his own coat, and I saw the outline of something metallic. A gun. "You're right," I said quickly. "I'm recording. And if I don't make it home tonight, everything I've documented goes straight to the FBI. They'll have your names, your faces, your truck's license plate. Patricia took photos when you parked." The man's eyes narrowed. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Do you really want to take that chance?" I pulled out my phone, showing him the screen with multiple countdown timers. "Automatic uploads in 3 hours unless I cancel them. Kill me and you'll have federal agents tearing apart your life by morning." For the first time, I saw uncertainty in his face. Tiffany was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "Roger, she doesn't understand. Tell her it wasn't supposed to happen like this." I said, "Shut up." The man, Roger Reeves, I realized, raised his hand like he might hit her. "Don't touch her," I said sharply. He turned to me, surprised. "You're defending her. After what she did." "I'm not defending anyone. I'm trying to understand what happened to my son." For a long moment, we stood in tense silence. The wind whipped across the empty lot, carrying the smell of old grain and rust. Finally, Roger spoke. "Your son was collateral damage. He wasn't supposed to die." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" Tiffany came to us with a problem. She'd been skimming from the hospital pharmacy for months, selling pills, paying off gambling debts. David found out. He told her if she didn't turn herself in, he would. Roger shrugged. "She couldn't let that happen. She'd go to prison, lose custody of the kid, everything." "So you killed him," I whispered. "We arranged an accident, something that would look natural. Heart attack, sudden but believable. She gave him the medication, just enough to stress his heart. He was supposed to die at home, quickly, while she was at work with an alibi. But something went wrong," I said, understanding dawning. "He was stronger than we thought, fought it for 3 days. By the time he finally went down, The original death certificate we'd filed was already dated wrong. Roger's voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing a botched construction job instead of murder. We had to pay off the coroner to overlook the discrepancy. Tiffany had collapsed to her knees in the gravel, sobbing. I didn't want him to suffer. I didn't want any of this. I just wanted him to go quietly, to let me handle things my way. I stared at her. This woman I'd welcomed into my family and felt nothing but cold fury. You murdered the father of your child because he tried to make you face consequences for your crimes. You don't understand what it's like, Tiffany screamed. Always being judged, always being controlled. David was just like his father, rigid, self-righteous, thinking he knew better than everyone. He would have destroyed me. So you destroyed him first. I did what I had to do to survive. And Charlotte? My voice cracked. What about your daughter? You left her homeless, Tiffany, living in a car, stealing the money her father left to protect her. Charlotte is fine. She's strong. She'll figure it out. Tiffany's face twisted with something ugly. She's always been David's daughter anyway, looking at me like I'm dirt, judging me just like he did. I'd heard enough. I turned to Roger. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give you this death certificate, the original, not a copy. In exchange, you're going to walk away from Tiffany. Whatever arrangement you have with her ends tonight. Joyce? No, Tiffany started. You don't get to talk, I snapped. You don't get to negotiate. You murdered my son. If I had my way, you'd be in prison for the rest of your life. But Charlotte needs closure more than revenge. She needs to access her trust fund, finish college, build a life. And for that, she needs this certificate. I pulled the document from my coat pocket and held it out to Roger. Take it. File it with whatever bank or court needs it. But leave Charlotte alone. Forever. Roger studied me for a long moment. What about your FBI evidence? I'll delete it. All of it. On one condition. Tiffany confesses everything to Charlotte. Not the murder. Charlotte doesn't need that weight. But the theft, the lies, the manipulation, she admits what she did and why, and then she disappears from Charlotte's life permanently. You can't make her do that, Roger said. No, but you can. I met his eyes. Because if Tiffany ever contacts Charlotte again, if she ever tries to take what belongs to my granddaughter, if she ever even drives past my farm, then all those documents go public, and you'll go down with her. The ledgers show your name, Roger, your payments, your involvement. The FBI would love to have evidence against the Reeves family. I could see him calculating, weighing risks. Finally, he nodded. Deal. But if you're lying about deleting that evidence, I'm not. I just want my granddaughter safe and free from her mother's poison. That's all I've ever wanted. He took the death certificate, examined it carefully, then pocketed it. Tiffany, get in the truck. But where will I go? She was still on her knees, looking between us desperately. Not my problem, Roger said coldly. You're used up anyway. Too messy, too emotional. I only kept you around because you had access to medications we needed. That's over now. He walked back to his truck without another glance at her. Tiffany looked at me, her face a mask of desperation and rage. You self-righteous witch, she hissed. You think you've won? You think Charlotte will thank you for this? She'll hate you for keeping her father's money from her all these years. I didn't keep anything from her. You did. And now Charlotte will know exactly who to blame. I turned away, heading back to my car. Joyce! Tiffany's voice was shrill. You can't just leave me here. Watch me. I got in my Subaru and started the engine. Through the rearview mirror, I watched Roger's truck pull away, leaving Tiffany alone in the empty parking lot. She stood there screaming something I couldn't hear, her figure small and pathetic in the darkness. I didn't feel sorry for her. I felt nothing at all. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel as I drove away. The voice recorder was still running in my pocket. It had captured everything. Tiffany's confession, Roger's admission of murder, all of it. I'd lied about deleting the evidence. Those documents were staying exactly where Patricia had put them, locked away with instructions to release them if anything happened to Charlotte or me. It was insurance, a guarantee that Roger and Tiffany would keep their distance. But I would never give them to the police. Because doing that would mean exposing Charlotte to the truth about her father's murder. It would mean trials and testimony, and having to relive the worst moment of her life over and over again. Charlotte deserved peace. She deserved to believe her father died naturally, that his last thoughts were of her, that he never suffered. Sometimes mercy meant keeping secrets, even terrible ones. I called Patricia when I was 15 minutes from home. I'm safe. Cancel the automatic uploads. Thank God. What happened? I'll explain later. Right now, I need to get home to Charlotte. My granddaughter was waiting on the porch when I pulled up, wrapped in a blanket, her face pale in the porch light. She ran down the steps and threw her arms around me. I thought they'd killed you, she sobbed. I thought, shh, I'm here. I'm safe. We both are. I held her tight, breathing in the cold winter air and the scent of her shampoo. And I have news. Your mother is gone. She won't bother you anymore. You're free, Charlotte. Finally free. Did she say why? Why she did all this? She was scared and selfish and broken in ways neither of us could have fixed. I guided Charlotte toward the house. But it doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that in 14 months, you'll have your trust fund. You'll go to college. You'll build the life your father wanted for you. Inside, the farmhouse was warm and bright. I made us tea, chamomile, sweet and soothing, and we sat at the kitchen table not talking, just being present with each other. Charlotte didn't need to know about murder confessions or criminal conspiracies. She needed to know she was loved, protected, home. Later, after Charlotte had finally fallen asleep in the guest room that had once been David's childhood bedroom, I sat alone in the dark living room and let myself cry. For my son, who'd died trying to do the right thing. For my granddaughter, who'd survived more than any child should have to. For the daughter-in-law I'd thought I knew, who'd turned out to be a stranger. The death certificate was gone, but Charlotte would be able to access her trust fund through the bank's alternative procedures. It would take time and paperwork, but it would happen. And Tiffany? She would disappear into whatever life criminals built for themselves when they became liabilities. Part of me hoped she'd find redemption somehow. But mostly I just hoped she'd stay gone. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Everything okay? Everything's okay, I replied. Thank you for everything. That's what friends do. Get some sleep, Joyce. You've earned it. But sleep wouldn't come easily tonight. Because tomorrow, I would have to start the hardest part. Helping Charlotte heal. Teaching her that her mother's betrayal wasn't her fault. That she was worthy of love. That the future could still be bright despite the darkness of the past. And I would have to carry the weight of what I knew. The truth about David's death. Alone. Forever. It was a burden I accepted willingly. Because protecting the people you love sometimes means bearing secrets they should never have to know. That was what it meant to be a grandmother. To be the foundation, the shelter, the keeper of both memories and silences. As I finally climbed the stairs to bed, I passed David's old room and paused at the doorway. Charlotte was curled up under the quilts, sleeping peacefully for the first time in years, probably. I kept my promise, I whispered to the ghost of my son. I kept her safe. I always will. Outside, snow began to fall again, covering the farmhouse and fields in clean white silence. Inside, 2 generations of Cartwright women slept under the same roof, survivors of different battles but bound by the same stubborn strength. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, we had won, and that was enough. For 3 weeks, life settled into something resembling normal. Charlotte worked at the diner, saved her tips, and slowly began to smile again. We decorated the farmhouse for a belated Christmas, baked cookies, watched old movies. She told me about her dreams, college, maybe studying veterinary medicine, traveling someday to places David had always wanted to see. I didn't tell her about the recording in my safe, the confession that could put her mother in prison for murder. But normal didn't last. It was mid-January when Patricia called, her voice tight with urgency. Joyce, we have a problem. Tiffany filed a petition with the county court yesterday. My blood ran cold. What kind of petition? She's claiming you coerced her into abandoning Charlotte. She's saying you threatened her, forced her to give up custody rights under duress. And she's filing for emergency guardianship of Charlotte, citing your age and claiming you're not mentally competent to care for a teenager. That's ridiculous. Charlotte's almost 21. She's claiming Charlotte is psychologically vulnerable, that you've isolated her from her mother and poisoned her against Tiffany. There's a hearing scheduled for next week. I sank into a chair. The phone pressed so hard against my ear it hurt. How can she do this? She agreed to stay away. Apparently, Roger cut her off completely after that night. No money, no support. She's desperate, Joyce. And desperate people are dangerous. Patricia paused. There's more. She's hired a lawyer, a good one, someone from the Reeves firm. They're backing her? Looks like it. Maybe they decided having her under control is safer than having her loose and unpredictable. After we hung up, I sat in the kitchen for a long time, thinking. Tiffany was coming back into Charlotte's life through legal channels. She was using the system to regain control, to access Charlotte's trust fund, to continue the manipulation. I had the recording that would destroy her, but using it meant revealing the truth about David's murder to Charlotte. It meant trials and investigations and putting my granddaughter through unimaginable pain. There had to be another way. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. Charlotte, I said over dinner, your mother has filed for guardianship. There's going to be a court hearing next week. Charlotte's fork clattered to her plate. What? But she agreed. You said she was gone. I know, but she's changed her mind. Or someone changed it for her. I won't go back to her. I won't. Charlotte's voice rose, panic edging in. Joyce, I can't live with her again. I can't. You won't have to. I promise. I reached across the table and took her hand. But Charlotte, the hearing is going to be difficult. Tiffany's lawyer will attack me, try to paint me as incompetent or controlling. They'll try to make you look unstable. We need to be prepared. How do we fight this? By telling the truth. All of it. Charlotte's eyes widened. You mean about the trust fund? The extortion? Everything. The forged signatures, the emancipation while you were living in your car. We lay it all out for the judge. I squeezed her hand. And I need you to be strong. Can you do that? She nodded, but I could see the fear in her eyes. My brave granddaughter, who'd survived so much, was terrified of facing her mother in court. I spent the next week preparing. Patricia helped me organize documents, bank records, the emancipation papers, Charlotte's employment history, photographs of her living in the car. We found Charlotte's old text messages with Tiffany, showing the threats and manipulation, but I kept the recording locked away. That was my last resort, the nuclear option I'd only use if we had no other choice. The morning of the hearing dawned gray and cold. Charlotte dressed in the one nice outfit we'd bought together. A simple navy dress and cardigan that made her look young and vulnerable. Exactly what we needed. I'm scared, she admitted as we drove to the courthouse. So am I said honestly. But we're going to walk in there with our heads high. You're not a victim anymore, Charlotte. You're a survivor. And survivors don't back down. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, wood-paneled and somber. Tiffany was already there with her lawyer, a sharp-dressed man in his 40s with cold eyes. When Tiffany saw Charlotte, something flickered across her face. Not love, not even recognition, just calculation. She looked different, cleaner, more put together than when I'd seen her at the grain elevator. Her hair was done, her makeup perfect, her clothing expensive. Someone had invested money in making her look like a concerned mother rather than a desperate criminal. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Henderson, entered and we all stood. She had a reputation for being fair but strict, exactly the kind of judge who wouldn't tolerate games. Tiffany's lawyer went first, painting a picture of a devoted mother separated from her daughter by a manipulative grandmother. He claimed I'd preyed on Charlotte's grief after David's death, convinced her that Tiffany was unstable, orchestrated the emancipation to gain control of Charlotte's trust fund. Mrs. Cartwright is 69 years old, Your Honor, he said smoothly. While I'm sure her intentions were good, she's clearly not equipped to guide a young woman through these crucial developmental years. My client simply wants to restore her relationship with her daughter and provide the maternal support Charlotte desperately needs. I watched Charlotte's jaw tighten as the lawyer spoke. She was gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles were white. When it was our turn, our lawyer, a woman named Bet Meek who Patricia had recommended, stood calmly. Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence that contradicts Mr. Morrison's rather creative narrative. She started with the emancipation petition, reading Charlotte's own words from 2 years ago about why she needed to separate from her mother. Then came the bank records showing Tiffany's attempts to access Charlotte's trust fund illegally, the collection notices, the eviction, the pattern of financial irresponsibility. And where was Charlotte Cartwright 6 months ago, Your Honor? Bet asked. Not living with her mother in a stable home. She was sleeping in her car in a supermarket parking lot because her mother had told the family Charlotte was studying abroad. A complete fabrication. Tiffany's lawyer objected. Irrelevant. My client was going through a difficult financial period. A difficult period that lasted 3 years and resulted in her daughter becoming homeless? Bet's voice was sharp. Your Honor, I have photographs. Would you like to see where Charlotte was living while her mother claimed she was at Oxford? The judge nodded, and Bet displayed photos on the courtroom screen. Charlotte's car, crammed with her belongings. The sleeping bag. The textbooks purchased used because she couldn't afford new ones. I watched Tiffany's face as the images appeared. She didn't look guilty. She looked annoyed, like we were embarrassing her with unnecessary details. Your Honor, Bet continued, Mrs. Cartwright didn't manipulate Charlotte. She rescued her. When she discovered her granddaughter living in a car 3 days before Christmas, she did what any decent person would do. She brought Charlotte home. And yet, Judge Henderson said, looking at me over her glasses, you didn't immediately contact Ms. Cartwright to inform her of her daughter's whereabouts. Why not? This was the moment I'd been dreading. I stood slowly. Because Charlotte was terrified of her mother, Your Honor. And when I spoke to Tiffany, I understood why. I pulled out my phone, playing the audio from my visit to Tiffany's apartment. The hostile tone, the man's voice in the background, Tiffany's order to stop asking about Charlotte. That's taken out of context. Tiffany's lawyer interjected quickly. Is it? I turned to face Tiffany directly for the first time. Then perhaps your client can explain why she told me Charlotte was at Oxford when she knew perfectly well her daughter was homeless in Minnesota. Tiffany stood, her chair scraping loudly. I was protecting her. Ms. Cartwright, please sit down, Judge Henderson said sternly. No, you don't understand. None of you understand. Tiffany's composure was cracking, her voice rising. Charlotte is my daughter. Mine. I carried her, I raised her, I sacrificed everything for her. You tried to steal her inheritance, I said quietly. That money should have been mine. David left it to Charlotte to punish me, to control me from beyond the grave. She was shouting now, tears streaming down her face. He always controlled everything. The money, the house, every decision. And then he died and left me with nothing. He left you with a daughter who needed you, I said. And you abandoned her. I didn't abandon her. I needed time. I needed to figure things out. The debts were crushing me. And those men, they said they could help. What men? Judge Henderson's voice cut through the courtroom like a blade. Tiffany froze, realizing too late what she'd said. Her lawyer grabbed her arm, trying to get her to sit down, but she shook him off. This is all your fault, she hissed at me. You and your self-righteous judgment. You never thought I was good enough for David. You never accepted me into your precious family. I welcomed you, I said, my voice breaking slightly. I loved you like a daughter. I trusted you with my son's happiness and my granddaughter's well-being. And you betrayed all of us. Betrayed you? You have no idea what I went through. Living in David's shadow, being compared to his perfect mother, watching him give Charlotte everything while I got scraps. He gave Charlotte a trust fund to protect her from you. The words burst out of me before I could stop them. He knew, Tiffany. He knew you had problems with money, with control, with taking what wasn't yours. That's why he structured the trust the way he did. That's why he put extra security on it. He was trying to protect his daughter from her own mother. The courtroom went silent. Even Tiffany's lawyer looked shocked. Tiffany's face had gone white. How do you know that? Because I found his notes. In the trust documents. He wrote that if anything happened to him, the money had to be locked until Charlotte was old enough to manage it herself. Because he was afraid of what you might do. It was a lie. I'd never found such notes. But I could see in Tiffany's eyes that it was a truth she recognized. He didn't trust you, I continued softly. And he was right not to. Something broke in Tiffany then. She collapsed back into her chair, sobbing. Her carefully constructed facade shattered completely. Judge Henderson let the silence stretch for a moment before speaking. Ms. Cartwright, do you have anything to say in your defense? Tiffany looked up, mascara running down her face. For a moment, I thought she might confess everything. The murder, the criminal connections, all of it. Instead, she whispered, I just wanted her to need me again, the way she used to, when she was little, before David turned her against me. Your Honor, Bet said quietly, I think it's clear that Ms. Cartwright is not in a position to provide stable guardianship for Charlotte. If anything, Charlotte needs protection from her mother, not reconciliation with her. Judge Henderson looked at Charlotte. Young lady, you're almost 21. In a few months, this court will have no jurisdiction over you at all. But I'd like to hear from you. What do you want? Charlotte stood, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. I want to stay with my grandmother. She's the only family I have left who actually cares about me. My mother, she looked at Tiffany. My mother cares about money, about control, about herself, but not about me. She stopped caring about me the day my father died. That's not true, Tiffany whispered. Charlotte, please. You let me live in a car, Mom. You stole my inheritance. You lied to my grandmother for over a year. Charlotte's voice was getting stronger, clearer. I don't hate you, but I can't trust you, and I can't let you back into my life. Judge Henderson removed her glasses, cleaning them slowly while the courtroom waited. Finally, she spoke. I'm denying the petition for emergency guardianship. Ms. Cartwright, I'm ordering you to stay at least 500 feet away from Charlotte unless she initiates contact. Any violation will result in immediate legal consequences. She paused. I'm also ordering a full investigation into the allegations of financial exploitation and fraud regarding Charlotte's trust fund. If evidence of criminal activity is found, I'll refer the matter to the district attorney. Tiffany's lawyer started to object, but the judge held up her hand. We're done here. Ms. Charlotte Cartwright, you're free to remain with your grandmother. This court finds that Mrs. Joyce Cartwright has acted in Charlotte's best interests and shows no signs of the incompetence alleged by the petitioner. She looked at Tiffany with something like pity. Ms. Cartwright, I strongly suggest you seek counseling. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down, and it was over. Charlotte collapsed against me, sobbing with relief. I held her, my own tears falling, feeling the weight of 3 years of worry and fear finally lifting. Across the courtroom, Tiffany sat motionless, staring at nothing. Her lawyer was packing up his briefcase quickly, clearly ready to distance himself from a losing case. For a moment, I felt something almost like sympathy for her. But then I remembered David, poisoned slowly over 3 days. I remembered Charlotte sleeping in a frozen car. I remembered the ledgers and the lies and the casual cruelty. No, Tiffany had made her choices. Now she would live with the consequences. As we left the courthouse, Patricia met us in the hallway, grinning. You did it. We did it, I corrected. Thank you. For everything. Charlotte was quiet on the drive home, staring out the window at the snow-covered fields. Finally, she spoke. Did my father really write those things? About not trusting Mom? I thought about lying. But Charlotte deserved truth, even if it was incomplete. I don't know for certain what he wrote, but I know he loved you more than anything in the world. And I know he would be so proud of you right now. She nodded slowly. Joyce, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think she ever really loved me? Or was I always just something she was stuck with? My heart broke a little. I think she loved you the best way she knew how. But some people's best just isn't enough. Charlotte was quiet again, processing. Then she said something that surprised me. I'm glad Dad didn't trust her with my money. I'm glad he protected me, even after he was gone. She turned to look at me. And I'm glad I have you. You'll always have me, I promised. For as long as I'm here. Don't talk like that. You're going to live forever. I laughed despite everything. I'll certainly try. Back at the farmhouse, Patricia had prepared a celebration dinner. We ate and laughed and toasted to Charlotte's freedom. But later, when everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone in the dark living room with the recording device in my hands. The truth about David's murder was on this device. Evidence that could bring justice, that could put Tiffany and Roger Reeves in prison where they belonged. But it would destroy Charlotte. And David had spent his last conscious moments setting up protections for his daughter, not revenge against his wife. I thought about what he would want: justice or peace, truth or mercy. In the end, the choice was easy. I took the recording device outside to the burn barrel we used for trash, watched as the flames consumed the plastic and circuitry, erasing the confession forever. Some truths were too heavy for the people you loved to carry. Some secrets needed to stay buried so that the living could move forward. David could never know what I'd done. But I hoped, he would understand. Above me, the winter stars blazed cold and distant. Inside the farmhouse, Charlotte slept peacefully, dreaming of a future finally within reach. And I stood between past and present, keeping watch over both, carrying the weight so she wouldn't have to. That was enough. That would always be enough. Spring came late to Minnesota that year, but when it finally arrived, it transformed the farmhouse and surrounding fields into something almost magical. The snow melted, revealing green grass underneath. The apple trees behind the barn burst into bloom, and Charlotte, who'd spent the winter healing, began to bloom too. The court's investigation into Tiffany's financial dealings moved slowly, but thoroughly. By March, the district attorney had enough evidence to file charges: fraud, attempted theft, forgery. Nothing about murder. That secret remained buried with the ashes of the recording device. Tiffany took a plea deal: 3 years in minimum security, followed by 5 years probation. Her lawyer argued it was excessive for a woman driven to desperate acts by grief and financial hardship. The prosecutor argued it was lenient for someone who'd systematically exploited her own daughter. Charlotte didn't attend the sentencing. She'd said everything she needed to say in that courtroom back in January. Now she was focused on moving forward, not looking back. The trust fund investigation concluded in April. With the proper death certificate filed, obtained through official channels this time, and the court's verification of Tiffany's fraudulent attempts to access the account, the bank agreed to release the funds to Charlotte on her 21st birthday in June, as David had originally intended. It wasn't a fortune. $50,000, enough for college, for a start, for breathing room. David had been a careful man, not a wealthy one. But he'd provided for his daughter in the ways that mattered most. "I'm going to study veterinary medicine," Charlotte announced one morning over breakfast, "at the University of Minnesota. I can commute from here if that's okay with you." "Of course it's okay. This is your home, Charlotte, for as long as you want it to be." She smiled, that bright smile I'd seen glimpses of when she was young, before grief and betrayal had dulled it. I was thinking, maybe I could help you with the farm, too. I know you've been managing alone since Grandpa Tom died, but you don't have to anymore. We could work it together. The offer touched me more deeply than she could know. I'd like that very much. Over the following weeks, we fell into a rhythm. Charlotte took morning classes and worked afternoon shifts at the diner. She'd decided to keep the job through summer, said she liked the independence and the people. I tended the garden and the few animals we still kept, and in the evenings we'd work side by side repairing fences and painting the barn. Patricia visited often, bringing news and gossip and her endless supply of homemade casseroles. One afternoon in May, she arrived with more than just food. "I thought you should know," she said carefully, settling at the kitchen table. "Tiffany tried to contact Charlotte last week." My blood ran cold. "How? She's not supposed to—" She had someone else send a letter. Someone not covered by the restraining order. A friend from before all this happened. Patricia pulled an envelope from her purse. The prison screened it first, then sent it to Charlotte's lawyer. Bet thought Charlotte should decide whether to read it. Charlotte came in from feeding the chickens, saw the envelope, and froze. "Is that from her?" "Yes," I said quietly. "You don't have to read it if you don't want to." Charlotte stared at the envelope for a long moment. Then she took it, turned it over in her hands, and walked outside without a word. Patricia and I waited in tense silence. 20 minutes passed. Then Charlotte came back in, her eyes red, but her face calm. She apologized, Charlotte said softly. She said she knows she can never make up for what she did, but she wanted me to know she's getting help. Therapy, addiction counseling. She said, her voice caught. She said she hopes someday I can forgive her, but she understands if I can't. How do you feel? I asked. Charlotte sat down, folding the letter carefully. Sad, angry, relieved maybe. I don't know. She looked at me. Do you think people can really change, Joyce? Or do they just get better at hiding who they've always been? It was a hard question. I thought about Tiffany, the woman she'd been when David first brought her home, bright and funny, and a little lost. The woman she'd become after his death, desperate and cruel and willing to destroy her own daughter to survive. I think people can change if they want to badly enough, I said finally. But wanting to change and actually doing the work are different things. Your mother has a long road ahead of her. Whether she walks it or not, that's up to her. I don't think I can forgive her, Charlotte whispered. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That's okay. Forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone, including your mother. It's something you give if and when you're ready. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. What matters is that you're healing, that you're building a life. That's what your father would have wanted. Charlotte nodded, wiping her eyes. Then she did something unexpected. She folded the letter back into the envelope and tucked it into a drawer in the kitchen hutch. I'm not ready to respond, she said. But maybe someday I will be. For now, I just want to keep moving forward. Then that's exactly what we'll do. As spring turned to summer, the farm came alive in ways I hadn't seen in years. Charlotte threw herself into the work with enthusiasm that reminded me of David at her age, up before dawn to tend the animals, spending long afternoons mending equipment and clearing irrigation ditches, researching sustainable farming techniques on her laptop in the evenings. We could expand, she said one night, spreading papers across the dinner table. Not huge, but enough to be profitable. Maybe some goats for dairy, expand the vegetable garden, sell at the farmer's market in town. I've been doing the math. It's actually viable. I looked at her calculations, at the careful plans she'd drawn up, and felt something warm bloom in my chest. Hope. Pride. The certainty that Tom and David would both be so proud of the woman Charlotte was becoming. Let's do it, I said. Let's build something together. On the morning of Charlotte's 21st birthday, we drove to the bank together. The same bank where Tiffany had tried to steal Charlotte's inheritance, where security measures David had put in place 3 years ago had protected his daughter even after his death. The account manager, a kind woman named Mrs. Patterson, pulled up Charlotte's trust fund on her computer and smiled. Everything's in order. All we need is your signature, Charlotte, and the funds will transfer to your personal account. Charlotte signed, her hand steady. And just like that, she had her independence. Her father's final gift, delivered exactly as he'd planned. What will you do first? I asked as we left the bank. Charlotte grinned. Buy you lunch. And then, she paused, looking thoughtful. I want to set up a scholarship fund. Nothing big, just $1,000 a year. For kids who've been through the foster system or family hardship. Kids who need help getting to college. My throat tightened. Charlotte, that's beautiful. Dad would have liked it, I think. Turning something bad into something good. She linked her arm through mine. And I want to name it after him. The David Cartwright Educational Fund. Is that okay? He would be honored, I managed to say. I'm honored. We celebrated that night with Patricia and a few of Charlotte's friends from the diner. Young people who'd befriended her over the past months, who knew nothing about her past, except that she was kind and hardworking and deserved happiness. The farmhouse rang with laughter for the first time in years. Later, after everyone had gone home and Charlotte had gone to bed, I stood on the porch watching the stars emerge. Patricia joined me, 2 glasses of wine in hand. You did good, Joyce, she said quietly. You saved that girl. We saved each other, I corrected. I was so lonely before she came back into my life. This house was so empty. Now it's full again. What about Tiffany? Do you ever think about what you know about David? I'd wondered when Patricia would ask. She knew I'd confronted Tiffany and Roger that night at the grain elevator. She knew I'd come back with information I'd never shared with anyone. I think about it, I admitted. But knowing the truth and acting on it are different things. Charlotte is happy now, Patricia. She's healing. She's building a future. What good would it do to drag her through the horror of learning her mother murdered her father? Justice? Justice for who? David is gone. Knowing what happened won't bring him back. And Tiffany is in prison anyway, for crimes we can prove. I took a sip of wine. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is carry the burden yourself, so someone else doesn't have to. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Does Charlotte suspect? Maybe. She's smart. She knows something isn't quite right about how David died. But she's chosen not to push, and I'm grateful for that. I looked at my friend. Will you judge me for keeping this secret? No, Patricia said softly. I think you're protecting your granddaughter the same way David tried to protect her. With everything you have, even when it costs you. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the night settle over the fields. Inside the farmhouse, lights glowed warm and golden. Charlotte's room, the kitchen, the living room where Tom and I had spent 40 years building a life together. This place had seen births and deaths, joy and sorrow, love and loss. It had weathered storms literal and figurative, and it was still standing, still strong, still home. I'm 70 in September, I said suddenly. 70 years old, and I feel like I'm just starting a new chapter. Patricia laughed. That's because you are. You and Charlotte building this farm back up together. That's a beautiful thing, Joyce. It is, I agreed. It really is. The summer months passed in a blur of activity. Charlotte started her classes. She'd enrolled in summer session to get ahead, and excelled immediately. Her professors praised her dedication, her natural affinity for animals, her careful attention to detail. The farm flourished under our combined efforts. We added 6 dairy goats that Charlotte named after characters from her favorite books. The vegetable garden produced more than we could eat, and we started selling at the Saturday farmers market in town. People remembered Thomas, remembered David, and welcomed us with open arms and loyal customers. Charlotte made friends, real friends, not people who wanted something from her. Young women from her classes who studied together and laughed together and built the kind of bonds that would last a lifetime. Young men who asked her to coffee and movies, who she dated casually without the weight of past trauma crushing her spirit. She was becoming who she was always meant to be, and I had the privilege of watching it happen. In August, Patricia called with unexpected news. Roger Reeves was arrested last week. Federal charges, racketeering, money laundering, drug trafficking. They're saying it's the biggest organized crime bust in the region in 2 decades. Will Tiffany be implicated? Probably. They found her ledgers during the raid, the same ones you photographed. She might be called as a witness, or face additional charges. Patricia paused. Joyce, the FBI might want to talk to you. You were connected to Tiffany. You found Charlotte. Let them talk to me, I said calmly. I'll tell them the truth. That I found my granddaughter living in a car. That I helped her escape an abusive situation. That Tiffany committed fraud. That's all they need to know. And that was all I told them when 2 agents showed up at the farmhouse a week later. Polite, professional questions about Tiffany's activities, Charlotte's situation, the timeline of events. I answered honestly, showed them documents Bet had provided, described the court case and Tiffany's conviction. I didn't mention the grain elevator, didn't mention Roger's confession, didn't mention anything that would require explaining how I knew what I knew. They thanked me for my cooperation and left. Charlotte, who'd been nervously waiting in her room, came downstairs when their car disappeared down the drive. Is it over? She asked. I think so, I said. Whatever happens to Roger Reeves or your mother, that's not our story anymore. Our story is here. This farm, this life we're building. That's what matters now. Charlotte hugged me tight. Thank you for everything you've done. For fighting for me. For taking me in. For loving me even when... Her voice broke. Even when my own mother couldn't. Oh, sweetheart. I held her close. This precious girl who'd survived so much. You've always been loved. By your father, by me, by your grandfather Thomas. Nothing your mother did or didn't do changes that. September brought cooler temperatures and the start of fall semester. Charlotte's schedule was packed. Classes, labs, study groups, her shifts at the diner, work on the farm. But she was thriving on the challenge, energized rather than exhausted by all she was doing. On my 70th birthday, she surprised me with a party. Nothing elaborate, just Patricia and a few neighbors, cake and coffee in the farmhouse kitchen. But the greatest surprise was the gift she gave me. It was a photo album, leather-bound and beautiful. Inside were pictures she'd collected, some from my old albums, some new ones she'd taken. Tom and me on our wedding day, David as a baby, as a boy, as a young man, Charlotte through the years, from infancy to now. And on the last page, a recent photo of Charlotte and me standing in front of the barn, arms around each other, both of us smiling. Underneath, in Charlotte's careful handwriting, "Home is where family chooses to love you. Thank you for choosing me. Love always, Charlotte." I couldn't speak through my tears, could only hold the album and cry while Charlotte hugged me and Patricia dabbed at her own eyes. "You're not supposed to make old ladies cry on their birthdays," I finally managed. "Happy tears don't count," Charlotte said, grinning through her own tears. That night, alone in my room, I opened the album again and studied the photographs. The life Tom and I had built, the son we'd raised, the granddaughter we'd both loved, and the new chapter Charlotte and I were writing together. People often talk about aging as a process of loss, losing strength, losing relevance, losing purpose. But they're wrong. Age isn't about loss. It's about refinement, about knowing what truly matters, about having the wisdom to protect what needs protecting, and the courage to let go of what doesn't. I'd lived 7 decades, buried a husband and a son, faced down criminals and courtrooms and my own fear, kept secrets that would haunt me until my last breath. But I'd also saved my granddaughter, given her a home and a future, shown her that family isn't just blood, it's choice and commitment and love that doesn't quit even when things get hard. That was my legacy. Not the farm, not the years, but the life I'd helped Charlotte build from the ashes of tragedy. As winter approached again, Charlotte and I sat together by the fireplace one evening, planning next spring's crops and discussing her coursework. Outside, the first snow of the season was falling, covering the farm in fresh, white silence. "Joyce," Charlotte said suddenly, "do you ever wish things had been different? With Mom? With everything?" I thought about the question carefully. "I wish your father had lived. I wish you'd never had to suffer what you suffered. But if things had been different, you might not be here now. And I wouldn't trade these months with you for anything." She nodded slowly. "Me neither. I mean, I wish Dad was here. I'll always wish that. But I'm glad I have you. You'll always have me," I promised. "And when I'm gone, you'll have this farm and the strength to keep building whatever life you want. Don't talk about leaving. You're going to live forever, remember." I smiled. "I'll do my best." But we both knew nothing lasted forever. People left, circumstances changed, time moved forward whether we wanted it to or not. What mattered was what we built with the time we had, the love we gave, the legacy we left behind. David had protected his daughter even after death. Tom had taught us both what it meant to work hard and love harder. And I'd learned that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply refuse to give up on the people you love. The snow fell heavier, blanketing the world outside. Inside, the fire crackled warm and bright. Charlotte leaned against my shoulder and I wrapped my arm around her. 2 generations of Cartwright women, survivors of different battles, bound by love and loss and the stubborn determination to keep going no matter what. We'd faced manipulation, betrayal, even murder. We'd walked through fire and come out stronger on the other side. And now, finally, we were home. The farm stood strong around us, full of memories and promise. Charlotte would go to class and I'd tend the animals. We'd work side by side in the evening, planning and dreaming and building. But tonight, we simply sat together in the warmth, grateful for what we'd survived. and hopeful for what was yet to come. Age hadn't diminished me. It had refined me into exactly who I needed to be to save the person who mattered most. And that was wisdom. That was strength. That was legacy. That was enough. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. And don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you.